Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is my twice weekly live webcast. It's Wednesday, 29th of May, and what have I got for you in today's show? Well, quite a packed one as usual. We'll have a look at the new EU border controls that are coming in later this year, which are likely to cause delays at ports and the Eurotunnel. Bikers crossing from Malaysia to Singapore, however, can use a digital ID QR code. The president of Czechia has spent the night in hospital after a minor motorcycle crash. A Bournemouth dealer has been targeted by thieves. Over in Lagos, okada protesters have been shot dead after an exchange of gunfire with the local police. Two foreign nationals have been illegally modifying motorcycles in Thailand. They were arrested and their bikes were seized. And we've got some drawings, well, one drawing of the CFMOTO 504 engine that I talked about in the previous show. And finally, in depth today, we'll be returning to the topic of countersteering. And this will be a 101 guide, a basic guide to getting your bike to turn. So stay with me till the end of the show for that. Don't forget, if you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to add to the show, I will get back to you if I possibly can during the show. If I can't do it during the show, I will return to it afterwards. So stay with me for the next 30 plus minutes of topical news, controversial views, and better biking tips. Right, okay, so let's start with today's first piece of news. Now this is sort of these fun ones really. Oops, that's the wrong thing. Let's get that on there. That's also the wrong thing. Let's bring it back to the right one. I've got to reset the picture. There it is. Now, as you probably expect, I do get a fair amount of unsolicited advertising dropping through the both the door and the virtual email box. Some of it's vaguely useful, sort of printing costs, for example. I did need some business cards soon, and some which isn't. Now, one Spanish company pinged me recently with an unmissable offer on electric mini motos. Great fun, I'm sure, for the right kind of person, not much use for me. Now, even less use was the latest quote, unique opportunity that you may be interested in. I've now had 3 emails from the same outfit telling me that, quote, we have set up a unique partnership with Onely Golf Club, and I'm looking for a local company to become our official partner. And I was told that aligning your business with such a prestigious establishment can elevate your brand image and generate a positive association in the mind of potential customers, as well as in-club video ads and complimentary rounds of golf. I'd get a hole named after survival skills. Wow. So how much is all this? Well, the 2-year contract is just £22 a week, or to put it another way, around £1,200 per year. And here's the pitch. As you are local to this club, it makes sense to offer this to you first. Now, I wasn't in the least bit interested, but I'd never heard of Onely, and anyway, I'm no golfer, so it didn't mean much. So I looked it up, and it turned out this local venue is halfway between Birmingham and Liverpool, 3 hours and about 160 miles away up the M6. So much for being local. And with a bit of digging, it didn't actually take me long to discover that the company behind these emails, W1G, also known as Hole in One Golf, has a raft of negative reviews on Trustpilot from people who were silly enough to take up their advertising offer and found that it wasn't quite what it seemed. First of all, many of the benefits were never delivered, as people tried to get their round of golf and couldn't. Some of the golf courses apparently never heard of them. They certainly didn't have a hole named after them. And there are numerous reports of the contract being auto-renewed without specific consent, with it being impossible to cancel. It's all hidden away in the terms and conditions. The company's response to poor reviews actually is also downright nasty and aggressive, so definitely one to avoid. Anyway, rather more usefully, I hope, for all of you, is something that I'm offering to the end of this month of May, and that's half price coaching. I've just finished actually online a half price session with Fergus, and he said, I never expected to get anything like this amount out of the session. So you can book yourself a 60-minute online coaching session for just £20 at the moment from the comfort of your own home. After the session, I'll answer any follow-up questions that you might have. I'll also give you access to a download, so you can grab your own copy of the video of the session, and you can basically review it as many times as you like. So what are you waiting for? It is your very last chance to get one of these sessions, just a couple of days left. There it is. One of the topics I'm happy to take you through on online coaching is counter steering, what it is, how it works, why we need it, plus the usual missing link when counter steering gets discussed, some practical exercises to try it out first off-road and then to get the basics in place on the road. Now, thanks to some fairly surprising comments on the post I put up last couple of weeks ago about a woman who lost control and crashed in a corner, it is obvious to me that counter steering is a technique that needs to be covered time and again. Last week on Sunday, no, it was last Wednesday when we're talking about, I explained just why every rider should actually understand and be able to make conscious counter steering inputs. Today I'll look at the basic understanding of what counter steering actually is, why we need to exploit it. So stay tuned to the in-depth Trust the Trainer session for a counter steering fix. And I can say good morning to Kevin at this point. Morning. Right, anyway, that's all to come. So right now we have the weather for bikers. Let's have a quick look at what's going on outside. Well, it's bright and sunny here at the moment, some clouds up there, but at least it's an improvement on the last few days, which have been particularly damp. But as we move out of May into June, things do appear to be perking up a little bit. So for today, expect a mix of sunny spells and patchy clouds. There will be scattered showers building during the day, and they're likely to be heavy with some thunder in the east. The south and west remain breezy. Thursday sees much the same. Breezy day with a mix of sunny spells, cloud and scattered showers, and again towards the southern part of England this time the rain is more likely to be thundery. And Friday looks sunny at times across most of the UK, cloudy weather for Wales this time, southern England and the far north of Scotland. And Saturday remains partly cloudy with possible drizzle in the south, but drier to the north, so it isn't too bad for riding the first day of our weekend. All right, okay, so on with the news. Now, the first story involves a collision between a paramedic driving an ambulance and a motorcyclist, and the driver has been cleared of causing serious injury by careless driving. Eileen Ireland had been behind the wheel of the ambulance when it collided with a motorcycle. This was on July the 30th, 2022, and it happened on the A483 in Radnorshire in Wales. The crash left the passenger on the motorcycle, Sandra Dawson, with life-threatening injuries. Now, Miss Ireland from Clanchlucairn, near Newtown, denied the charge against her and was preparing to stand trial at the Crown Court next month. Apologies, by the way, if I mangled the pronunciation there. But in a hearing last Thursday, May the 23rd, the judge entered a not of guilty verdict for Miss Ireland after the prosecution said it was actually offering no evidence against her. The prosecution said there were conflicts between the complainant's recollection of the very fast-moving incident and their own expert evidence. The prosecuting barrister, Thomas Screpens, said, "When one looks at the calculation and evidence, the Crown makes no aspersions on the complainant of making mistruths in any way. Their recollection versus the expert evidence conflicts. I formally offer no evidence and invite a not guilty verdict." Miss Ireland was not in court, as the judge Simon Mills said. Seems that both of the experts are neither able to say whether the motorbike was in view at the time Miss Ireland started to make the manoeuvre, and it doesn't seem to be a gratuitous U-turn. They were being called to another job. This is a case where the jury would have struggled to find the defendant guilty of any offence and may see it as an avoidable accident. Judge Mills added, if the defendant was here, I would say she has no stain on her character as a result. I also make no criticism of the two motorcyclists. It was an unfortunate accident. This case is at an end. Right, now if you're planning to cross to Europe on your bike later this year, you should be aware that from October the 6th, a new European entry and exit system known as EES is likely to cause delays. Now, this is an automated IT system, and it will register travellers, visa holders and visa exempt holders every time they cross an EU external border. Non-EU passport holders will register for EES either at a kiosk or in person with a border officer. The scheme applies to all short stay visits of up to 90 days within any 180-day period, and as well as recording passport data, the system will capture fingerprints and facial images and the time and place of entry and exit. Travellers will also need to answer some questions about their journey. Now, this will replace the current system of the manual stamping of passports, which the Commission says is time-consuming, does not provide reliable data on border crossings, and does not allow a systematic detection of those who have exceeded the maximum duration of their authorised stay. Now, should you be flying, the system will operate on your arrival in Europe, but for Eurostar passengers and for our point of view, for those of us taking ferries or catching the Eurotunnel shuttle at Folkestone in Kent, the plan is that the information will be taken in the UK before departure. So preparations are underway to provide the necessary equipment and processing areas at major channel crossing points, including Dover's Ferryport and the Eurotunnel Folkestone site. Cars and presumably motorcycles will be queued in the usual lanes upon arrival in the port. Then travellers will be met by agents with a tablet and asked for details. Now, by summer next year, the hope is that they will relocate this processing to the Western Docks. Dover's plan includes actually reclaiming a dock from the sea to create more space for the processing area. And the plan is that the port will have this ready by September 2027. The port also says a canopy will be put up over the lanes for weather protection, which sounds like welcome news for bikers, though given that the vast area that is required for queuing, I guess that it will actually be over the area where people are being called forward to talk to these agents, rather than roofing the whole of the dockside. Now, Dover says that the time it will take to go through border controls is likely to rise from the current 45 to 90 seconds to a couple of minutes or possibly more when registering for EES. Now, as the registration process will need to be done individually, so two people on a bike will both need to register, there have been predictable predictions of delays. The UK Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, he was one to do this. He said that he'd to a committee of MPs that he was really worried about long delays. Queues regularly extend already out of the Dover ferry terminal onto the road network through Dover. And of course, for the Channel Tunnel operation, stack has been a regular feature of our roads in Kent, trucks queuing for the tunnel being parked on the M20. In the worst cases of sort of road closures, delays, strikes, traffic on the main roads has actually gridlocked a substantial part of Kent. Now, Eurotunnel, which operates the freight and vehicles shuttles, that's spending the equivalent of 70 million building processing zones, and people will be able to queue in their cars to use these automatic machines. They will also hire, they say, 70 new passenger assistance staff on each side of the channel, but they warn that getting through border controls could take between 5 and 7 minutes longer per vehicle. I can't see how that's not going to cause delays. Now, apparently the EU has actually been developing an app to enable this EES registration to be started from home, but that's not going to be ready for the start of the new system. So the EU have said that for a 6-month transitional period, these checks can be reduced if bad delays build up. A spokesman for the UK government said they're working closely with the EU and member states to minimise any impact on our shared borders with Europe. Now, what's so depressing about this story is that the border checks were an obvious consequence of Brexit long before Brexit was implemented. And the EES regulation, in fact, together with the targeted amendment necessary to the Schengen Border Code, actually goes back to April 2016, when it was originally proposed as part of what was called the Smart Borders Package. Now, the regulations were actually adopted formally on the 20th of November 2017 and entered into the statute books as long ago as the 29th of December 2017. That's 8 years to prepare. But as yet, everything appears to have been left to the very last moment. And, since it's taken so long to get to this point, it really it's a bit of a wonder why the EU haven't actually got their app working before they've introduced the checks. That should also be a point of debate, I think. Anyway, in complete contrast to the likely delays at the Channel crossings, here's how you get from Malaysia to Singapore. You simply drive up to the counter and you present a QR code to the scanner. At the moment, it's a pilot scheme. It will operate via for travellers travelling on a bus, or it's expected to be extended to motorcycles for the moment. And so basically you can cross over into Singapore from the mainland thanks to these QR codes, which are generated by official digital ID apps, and that saves having to show a passport. Now, the announcement of this 3-month pilot scheme was made on Monday following a interagency meeting. In phase 2, the scheme could be extended to private cars, and in phase 3, Singaporeans and other foreigners will be able to use the QR codes for immigration clearance, and it's expected to take less than a minute to cross through the checkpoint. Right, this is the president of Czechia, or Czech Republic. It's Petr Pavel, and he was taken to hospital on Thursday last week after injuring himself whilst riding a motorcycle. Now, his office said the injury is not serious, but required a short observation, and he was kept in overnight, discharged the following morning. Now, no further reports were given, but that didn't stop the Daily Mail reporting that he was racing his BMW 1200 GS, which appears to be complete speculation based on the fact that the crash happened off-road at a race circuit, and a Czech radio report actually said that the crash happened at low speed, and as a result Czech police are not reported to be investigating the accident because it happened on a closed circuit, not on the road. Mr. Pavel, he's 62 years old. He's a former high-ranking NATO general, and he's known both for his physical fitness and his love of motorcycles. A few weeks after his inauguration as president last year, he actually took his bike off to the state of Bavaria in neighbouring Germany. So hats off to him. Dorset Police. If you have any information about a break-in at the Rotate Motorcycles showroom, they would like you to contact them. The Bournemouth used bike dealership was targeted by thieves overnight on Tuesday, May the 21st, and the break-in happened from the rear via a neighbouring property. Now, the owner of the company, Ross Allison, he says he believes that the thieves loaded the bike into a Luton van, which he says was stolen from a local business in Blandford. Police didn't confirm that, but they also said helmets were stolen. Now, as well as 3 off-road machines, a 2022 Husqvarna TE300 and a pair of KTMs, a 2023 XC300 Hard Enduro and a 2015 EXC250. The other 7 bikes included a 2019 Panigale V4 Special, a pair of Ducati Panigale V4 S's, a 2020 Kawasaki ZH2 Naked, and a 2019 Yamaha R1M. Now, it strikes me that they are particularly identifiable bikes, so unless the bikes have been already containered up, ready to be shipped overseas, keep an eye open. If you see any of these, maybe a call to the police in Dorset is a good idea. Right, Sue's looked in. She says, cool president, I'd like to get LPM on a bike and maybe do something about our road. Somehow I can't see Rishi Sunak jumping onto a motorcycle. A private jet is more his style, I think. Right, okay, another story from abroad, and this is all about the Okada riders. I'll just give you a close-up on that picture. There we are. You can see a big pile of trashed motorcycles. Now, this is all about the long-running protests that are going on and have been going on in Lagos for a while by these commercial motorcycle riders known as Okada over the continued seizure of their bikes by local police. And the latest protest turned violent after gunshots sent locals running for cover. Shop owners shut stores, motorists made quick U-turns to avoid the chaos, apparently. The clash happened at the Ipaja Divisional Police Station, where around 100 riders were reported to have invaded the station to protest the seizure of 200 motorcycles. Now, reports say that gunfire broke out at around 10 a.m. as, quote, hoodlums hijacked the process. Reinforcements from nearby police stations restored order, but eyewitnesses said that several protesters were shot dead and many others were injured. The Lagos State Police have confirmed the incident and said normalcy had been restored to the area. A rider who didn't want to give his name said that we are not criminal, we are doing our business and we respect the law. Another claimed the police, the army always come to our park to collect money from us. We don't make much from the work. We also have family that depend on us for survival. Even when we work in the inner streets, the police will still come after us. Ipaja police station is the worst station in Lagos state. So it doesn't sound too good for the police there, does it? Okay, meanwhile, the police over in Thailand on the holiday island of Koh Samui, they have arrested 2 foreign nationals and seized their motorcycles because locals complained they were creating a public nuisance by riding these excessively loud bikes at high speeds through the area a dozen times each day and posing a threat to public safety. Now, the police required evidence before taking action, so the locals actually caught the riders on video and camera, including one video of one of the bikers actually flipping the cameraman the finger. A police checkpoint was subsequently set up and the pair, described as tourists, were subsequently apprehended. Their names and nationalities have not been disclosed, but both motorcycles have been traced to a rental outlet in Phuket and have said to have been illegally modified. Over in Queensland in Australia, 3 more motorcycles have been seized by the Moreton Highway Patrol, and they've charged a 24-year-old man with no less than 75 offences, and they seized his 3 bikes after a search warrant was issued. Now, this was again in response to complaints of dangerous riding in the area, with the address being raided early in the morning on Thursday, 23rd of May. And you can see the 3 bikes here loaded on the back of the truck. The man was charged with, amongst other offences, dangerous operation of a motor vehicle, unlicensed driving, driving an unregistered vehicle, driving an uninsured vehicle, driving a defective vehicle, hooning offences, which is a special Australian offence, willful damage, public nuisance, and using a mobile phone while driving. So he really did stack them up. 2 of the bikes are subject to forfeiture, the 3rd's impounded for 90 days. Right, now, what did I just want to say? Don't forget, if you're enjoying the show, do set a reminder for yourself. It goes out on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. It's almost always live. Occasionally it's recorded. Very rarely I miss a show. If you want to catch up, the YouTube channel Survival Skills UK is the best place to head. Right, okay, so next story, a little bit more on the CFMOTO 500 that I mentioned in the last video. It's comes with the daft sounding name of Voom. I showed you a link to a teaser video. This drawing has just appeared online and it's said to be a patent illustration for the motor itself. There are additional drawings which have been revealed. And as you'd expect, it's water cooled, it's 4-valve double overhead cam. The crank drives the overhead or the overhead cams via a chain, which is on one end, rather like my Hornet actually. The gearbox is a conventional 6-speed affair, but the video that was shown last week clearly shows that some of the renders that are being called the 500 online are clearly not the bike shown in the teaser video, so do take some of the other stories on this with a pinch of salt. Interestingly, I was racking my brains trying to remember the last time that there was a 500 on the market of this ilk, and this is the last one that I can think of which appeared. It's the Kawasaki Z500 twin shock bike. That would have appeared, oh crikey, early 80s I think, maybe even late 70s, I can't remember, but certainly it was over 40 years ago. I rather liked them actually. Interested to know what you think of those particular bikes. Right, now before I move on to the in-depth piece, don't forget Survival Skills publishes a range of paperbacks on better biking topics. You can visit my publisher at lulu.com. I'll put the link up for you in a moment, or you can download them from my Survival Skills coffee shop. It'll be a cheap investment on your riding. Now, if you want something for free, of course, there are also many free things to discover over on my coffee page. And the latest is advanced riding in just 500 words. It's basically a very quick reminder of the sort of things that you should be thinking about while you're you're riding. So if there's any words in there which you don't recognize, probably it's a good time to actually find out what they mean. So no catches, no sign-ups, simply download it from my coffee shop, and this particular download you can get directly from this link, so it's a nice and easy one. And while you're over there, have a look at the other content in the shop. There's inexpensive mini ebooks, there's plenty of free stuff, and of course there are links to my paperbacks in PDF format. Right, and that brings me rather neatly to today's final item. It's the in-depth piece, which I promised you right back at the beginning. And as I said, this is based on an article I wrote a couple of weeks ago about a near fatal incident involving an American rider who lost control of her new bike on a corner. And what I said at the time was the crash was a stark lesson into learning just why learning to counter steer is an absolutely vital life-saving lesson that all motorcyclists ought to have ingrained before they're let near the road. Now, as I said, somewhat to my surprise, I was challenged by people who said that we don't need to learn to counter steer, and that if you can ride, you must be doing it. So last week's post, I tried to dismantle that argument by arguing that we don't have any kind of innate and instinctive human ability to steer a two-wheeler, and that if we let riders loose without this understanding of how we steer a motorcycle, we're basically letting them loose without knowing how to get around bends. Now, unfortunately, here in the UK, and also over in the US, of course, counter-steering is often not taught. Here in the UK, it's because of an official reluctance to put it into the syllabus. Over in the US, it's because many riders don't ever take training. And so the result is that many riders learn to ride, and whilst they may get around some corners, they're not consciously aware of just what they're doing, so they struggle to react when things start to go wrong. But it also leads to a bunch of myths. You know, there are riders who still believe they steer by leaning into a corner. Others believe, I've been told, that it's only a technique used on sports bikes. It's a new technique. Somebody else told me that you can't counter steer on a cruiser because you can't push down on the bars. Now, the reality is all these riders are unwittingly counter steering their motorcycle, whether they realize it or not, every time they head out on two wheels. But during my sort of 25 years plus experience as post-test trainer, I've also found that even outwardly competent riders are actually surprised at just how much faster their bike can change direction when they start using counter steering consciously, as opposed to not being aware of exactly what they are doing with the handlebars. So today, 101, let's go right back to basics as I explain the difference between counter steering and leaning. Now, upright moving at 10 miles per hour or more, a bike will travel in a straight line if nothing upsets it. So wind, bumps or rider can push it offline, but absent those, it will continue to roll in a straight line so long as it maintains speed. So how do we get round a bend? Well, we have to make the bike lean. Once a motorcycle is leaning over, it will roll round in a circle. Now imagine an ice cream cone after you've eaten the ice cream out the end of it, of course. Give the cone a push and the wider end will roll around the pointy bit. This is exactly what a leaning motorcycle does and why the Americans call it a Dixie Cup effect. I'm not going to go into the whys and wherefores of exactly why it works, just believe that it does. Now here's the next bit of understanding. The radius of the circle that the bike is going to follow is determined by two things. It's determined by speed and it's determined by lean angle. So if we fix our speed, we can make a bike turn tighter by leaning over more. If we don't lean over so far, then the bike will take a much wider loop. Or we can fix the lean angle and now we can change our speed. If we ride faster, the bike will go out on that wide loop. If we slow down, the bike will turn on a tighter circle. That is how counter steering, or that is how leaning gets us to go round a corner. But the million-dollar question is just how do we get the bike from the vertical to leant over in the first place? And this is where counter steering comes in. Counter steering effectively unbalances that bike which wants to go in a straight line. Counter steering causes the bike to roll, that is to lean from the vertical to our lean angle. That's upright, that's leant over, and that movement from here to there is called roll. So how do we make that happen? Well, the answer is counter steering. We push the bars to the right to get the bike to fall to the right, and we push the bars to the left to get the bike to fall to the left. So that counter steering input is the mechanism which generates the roll, which creates the lean, which makes us go around corners, and that's how we get around a bend. So what about some of those objections? Is counter steering only for sports bikes? Well, of course not. Counter steering has been known about since the very early 1900s, when one of the Wright brothers, yes, those Wright brothers, wrote an article about how a bicycle would steer. He published this as a paper in a US engineering journal over 100 years ago. And since there are sound physics principles behind counter steering a bicycle, it actually works on any two-wheeler from an e-scooter right up to your high bar cruiser. Now, as a starting point, as I said, we also need to know that we push the bars in the direction that they rotate. So as the bars rotate around the steering stem, we push them that way. What we don't try to do is push down on the handlebars. That doesn't make the bike steer. So if we want to turn right, as I said, we push the right bar away. If we want to turn left, we push the left bar away. At normal speeds, only a very gentle push is needed. The bars don't need to turn very far either. And that's probably why many riders swear blind they're not counter steering. They simply don't feel what they are doing. But we do need to keep our elbows loose, something I've been talking about on other articles recently. If we're leaning on the bars, as tends to happen with a low set riding position on a sports bike, something like this for example, the bars are well below the level of the tank, then the problem is that if we lean on those bars, they won't move because the push on one arm counteracts the other arm, which is resting the body weight on it. So this is possibly why counter steering has become associated in some people's minds with sports bikes. We do need to be aware that we need to relax our arms on the bars to let the bars turn. So soft arms allows us to counter steer. So possibly that's why people think counter steering only works on sports bikes. Now, how do we actually learn to counter steer? Well, the basic way is to go out and practice. Now, my advice here is to find a nice, big and empty stretch of car park, somewhere where you have a decent surface and you have plenty of room, because what we're going to need to do is get up to sort of 20 miles per hour or so the bike is nicely balanced, and then we need enough distance either end to first of all accelerate to 20, secondly to work on our steering with enough space either side to give us some margin space for error, and we need space at the other end to stop and turn around too. So plenty of space is needed to practice counter steering. Now, to get riders comfortable with counter steering, I tell them to talk to themselves, literally speak out loud as you're doing it. So what you would say is push left, go left, and push right, go right. Saying and doing at the same time not only helps for you to remember what you need to do as you're doing it, but it also helps to cement what you're doing in your brain for future reference. So all you need to do, ride away in a straight line, get up to about 20 miles per hour, and very gently and just for a fraction of a second press one end of the bars away from you, and then do the same with the opposite bar. Now remember, we're using tiny amounts of pressure here. It's not a big heave-ho, and you don't rotate the bars very far. And remember, talk to yourself to help you do this. Now take note of what happens. The bike should swerve first one direction and then swerve back the other way. You should have noticed that the bike turns in the direction that you pressed the handlebar away from you on. And you should also have noticed that as soon as you stop pushing on the bar, the bike will actually return to the upright position. So it self-stabilizes at the end of your counter steering input. And what I say now is repeat this as often as you need to get comfortable with the technique. Then you can try a little slalom. Now, I would use something that you can run over safely. You certainly don't want to hit anything that's going to tip the front wheel off. One way to do this is to use old tennis balls cut in half. They can be easily run over without them squashing, or a couple of pairs of old gloves at a pinch, they'll do. I wouldn't use a shopping trolley though, and I certainly wouldn't use a big traffic cone. Now place each of these markers, whatever you use, about 10 meters apart. Those are 12 long paces or thereabouts for most of us. We certainly don't want to get them any closer together because we're not trying to make this difficult. It's not a challenge. All we want to do is have some markers so that we can control our steering and make it more precise as we steer first one way then the other. Now on the first couple of runs it is likely you'll make a mess of it. Typically people run over the tennis balls, or they can't make it through the gaps as planned. So don't worry about that. And one reason people make a muck of it on the first couple of goes is because they actually try to ride too slowly. Because they now have targets to aim for, they try to slow down, and then they discover that the bike doesn't steer well when they go too slowly. So keep speed up and remember to push left to go left, push right to go right. And as you get better, then you can start moving the intervals between your markers a little bit closer together, but don't make it too challenging. Right, that really is enough for today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a quick video from my 60-second safety series, which actually discusses this technique. So just bear with me while I get that running. Here it comes.
Better biking with survival skills.
Anyone on two wheels, cyclist, scooterist, motorcyclist, counter steers to get round corners, and it's remarkably easy. Look at the next bend and ask yourself which way it goes. This one's a right-hander. Then talk to yourself and say push right to go right, and simply push the right end of the handlebars away from you. Be careful, very little pressure is needed, and remember to push away and not down. As long as the bend keeps going, keep a bit of pressure on the right handlebar. As you straighten up, look for the next corner. It's a left-hander, so say push left to go left, then push away on the left end of the handlebars. With the van coming the other way, I want to make some space between us, so I add a little extra counter-steering pressure to open the gap. Push left to go left, and rinse and repeat. Right-hand bend, push right to go right. Left-hand bend, push left to go left. Why talk to ourselves? Because it helps burn the counter-steering response into our brains, and that's really useful when we come up on an unexpectedly tight corner. Sharp left, push left, and go left. Simple. Right, there you are. That's my very simple video on counter steering. Just you can watch that as often as you like. You'll find the link to it in my 60-second safety series, and here it is direct to that video. So go to my YouTube channel, check out all my videos, and see if there isn't something over there you're interested in. Right, okay, that's it for today's in-depth piece. Remember, if you want any personalised help with riding, drop me a line. I've just done, as I said, an online session with Fergus this morning, and he said he got far more out of it than he was expecting. If you're anywhere in the southeast, of course, I offer uniquely designed on-road training, unlike anything you might have experienced elsewhere. And don't forget that half-price online coaching offer that's available for the next couple of days. Right, okay, anything else to say? If you want to look at my newsletter, I recommend that you use the QR code here. That'll take you straight to the newsletter, allow you to download them. The newsletter contains links to all my better biking articles, including Elevenses, in a weekly newsletter. It comes straight into your email account, so you can pick and choose what you want to watch or read. There's the QR code for that there. And last but not least, do the usual thing: support, subscribe, like the channel if you haven't done so already. Subscribe and support, that's a great plan, but do like the video as well, because it helps other people catch up with it. That's it for today. Thank you very much indeed. If you've enjoyed today's show and found the item on 11s about counter steering particularly useful, do spread the word to your riding buddies. And if you are out there on the bike today, maybe you can just practice and remind yourself how it works. But enjoy your ride, stay shiny side up, and I'll see you for the next show.